back to Dean Obeidallah's show. Right now, very happy to have Rick Wilson back on,
Hey,
co-founder of
Dean.
Lincoln Project. It's good to see he had a #1 New York Times bestseller, Running Against the Devil, Plot to Save America from Trump and Democrats themselves, and more. You see him all the time on cable news. Rick, thanks for making time the day after the debate, my friend. So
Great to be with you.
I saw your tweet. Bad night, a bad night, but Trump is an existential threat to democracy, the republic, the Constitution, our fundamental liberties, in addition to being a fraud, a liar, a felon, a degenerate, a global embarrassment, and an ally of evil. Toughen up, fight on. It's
Yep.
like a Republican pep talk. So what do you say to people, Democrats? You see the panic. They love to panic. I'm a Democrat. I panic. But
Everybody, look, if Donald Trump had gone out last night and crapped his diapers, okay, the Republicans would have said, this was the greatest debate in all time. Nothing has ever been more powerful than this debate. They would have stood shoulder to shoulder, locked arms, and said, this is what we wanted, and this is the exact thing we needed, and all of that, right? But here's the thing. Democrats, there are a lot of Democrats today who wanted to be the cool kid, okay, who wanted to go on TV and say, oh, well, the president should withdraw from the race immediately because I'm so jaded and cynical and cool, and that's what I know. And the fact of the matter is, Dean, a lot of these people, they've never liked Joe Biden. A lot of them come out of Obama world. God bless them, but a lot of them do not like Joe Biden. They didn't want him to be the guy this time or last time. And so, whether it's score settling on their part or a desire to be in the sort of cool kid club of, yeah, I'm so dark, I'm going to just say we should get rid of him. I got to tell you, they don't fight like Republicans. And when they lose, they often wonder, like, how do the Republicans do it? They hold the goddamn line. They hold the line. And I wrote about this in my Substack today. Basically, there was a 130-day period between now and the election, right?
Mhm.
I was thinking about, like, what's a 130 plus or minus day window in history? And I'll tell you what one was. The Nazis invaded France in 1940, okay? Winston Churchill gave the finest hour speech, rallied the country. The Battle of Britain was a few weeks later, where the German Air Force was defeated and made it impossible for Hitler to invade Britain. And that period of 130 days between those two events changed the course of history. Why did it change it? Because the British didn't give up. They didn't roll up and go, okay, well, let's fire Churchill now because, France got invaded and we're not going to be able to defeat Hitler. That's my attitude completely. You've got to never stop waging this war against Donald Trump. You've got to never stop fighting against Donald Trump. If you stop for a minute, he regains his strength and will destroy this country. So we're going to keep at the guy. The Biden campaign is going to turn this around, I suspect, sooner than people think, because he did come out today in North Carolina with an absolutely knockout performance. I wish we'd had this performance from today on the stage last night.
So the Churchill never surrender speech comes to mind as Rick is talking here. So Rick, I mean, you've worked on a lot of campaigns. Have you had situations where a candidate had a bad debate and anything from your experience when you looked at what President Biden did? Because the other two, in 2020, he did great. So I'm not sure what happened.
I was standing off stage in the Boston debate where Al Gore knocked George W. Bush up one side of the stage and down the other. Okay, just absolutely blew him away in that first debate. And guess what? The next two debates, Al Gore walked in there thinking, I got this guy. He's a dumb little Texas governor. And George W. Bush whipped his ass. Bill Clinton, in his first debate against Ross Perot and George H.W. Bush, got blown away. He did a terrible debate. It was terrible. Barack Obama, widely considered to be one of the greatest rhetorical and performance presidents in terms of being able to present his ideas and himself on the stage, his first debate against John McCain was terrible. It was not good. It was not great, but he turned it around. And these things can be turned around. And look, I just choose not to. Look, first off, I'm not a Democrat. I can't make a decision for them. There's only one person in the world who can make that decision. That's Joe Biden. Okay. If he doesn't quit this race, it doesn't change what Donald Trump is, what Donald Trump represents, the greatest danger to America in our history. And look, I love me some Aaron Sorkin, and I love me some West Wing, but jerk off West Wing, fantasy land. We'll just change Joe Biden out for candidate X, the charismatic, wonderful young leader. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. How's that? How are you going to do that? Show me how you do it, because that sort of thing is a lovely fantasy. It is a lovely fantasy. But that's not how the world works. It's not how the actual politics in America work. If Joe Biden dropped dead tomorrow, that'd be a whole different question. But what you saw today on the stage in North Carolina was a guy who was clearly not dead.
And I'm chatting with Rick Wilson. Rick, do you think Biden should debate him again? I mean, it's not till September anyway. I wish it was 2 weeks from now. It would be more meaningful.
Listen, why not? Why not? Here's my point. Nothing will change what the MAGAs have been told for 4 long years. The MAGAs have been told for 4 years that Joe Biden drools in his oatmeal every morning and is wheeled around on a rascal scooter. Okay. They've been told, and unfortunately last night gave them a lot of validation. We know it's not true. We know Biden had a terrible night. And guys, folks in politics sometimes have really shitty, terrible performances. It just happens. It's a bad night for it to happen last night. But I think the campaign has learned a couple of lessons. One of which is don't run the guy around for 3 or 4 other events the day of at a big debate.
Oh, wow.
He had a bunch of other events during the day. They should have arrested him all day long.
Yes.
And they should have arrested his voice all day long. And there are a lot of ways to turn this around. There are a lot of ways to change this environment. And one of the ways I think that's the most important is to have the president out on the stump, making the case, as he did today in North Carolina, that this race is about democracy. This race is about the future. This race is about a world that is much different than the one Donald Trump is describing for us.
And it's interesting you mentioned your newsletter. I wrote for my Substack that this race, and I've said this on cable news for months, this is not Trump versus Biden. It's Trump versus democracy,
America.
Trump versus abortion, Trump versus abortion access, Trump versus freedom, and the list goes on. Climate change, whatever issue you care about, Trump is on the other end of this issue. Joe Biden's a standard bearer for our party. That's who it is. It's the values of the party is what he represents, and that's what's going forward. So that's why people have to step up. What about, a lot of Democrats, and maybe this is not even an issue because that's the rules. The rules were the rules. The moderators said they're not going to fact check. But it was frustrating to see that Dana Bash and Jake Tapper get lied to their face because they're better. They know the truth.
Listen, I admire both of them very much. And I don't know how the rules of the game at that point got set up to allow Trump to just continue to lie. And the degree to which, and I'm sure they were frustrated too. This clearly was how CNN corporate determined it was going to go.
Right.
But I will tell you, I found the approach frustrating, as I think many people did. But I also think it, in a weird way, in the longer term, plays to our benefit, and I'll tell you why. Donald Trump, when he realized very early in the process they weren't going to check him, they weren't going to say anything, he realized very early he could get away with murder. And so he started talking crazy. Look, if you saw Trump's performance in a vacuum, you'd think this guy's out of his damn mind. This guy's crazy. And it was the comparison of Biden being a little tired, a little exhausted, whatever it was, that I think also allowed a lot of our friends in the media who do not like Biden. They do not particularly like Joe Biden, and they love drama, and they love clicks, and they love eyeballs, and they love fire and destruction and the screaming. That idea is something that they've been waiting for. They've been waiting for a moment where the election becomes very dramatic, where the election becomes very exciting, and they've got it. They got it. They have their moment. And they also, like the New York Times, they really dislike Joe Biden.
I know it was like they had the op-eds written in advance. They just went one after the other today. that Biden should drop out. You mentioned tension between Obama and Trump people, and I've seen a couple people. Is that well known in political circles, or is that just a few people?
It's a few of the consultants. I don't think it is at the level of I don't think it's at the level of Barack and Michelle Obama.
No,
but I think there are some of the consultants who are very snippy, and who, they don't like Joe Biden. There's a long pattern. I'm not going to get in a public fight with all these people because
no, I understand. Ridiculous. I'm just trying to get a sense of why, like what, but maybe it's from yours personal. I don't even know.
A lot of them, let's put it this way. There's a not invented here syndrome by a lot of political consultants. And I think that's where we're at. They think they reinvented politics when they elected Barack Obama, but Barack Obama was a singular character, a singular powerhouse of communications ability. Not everybody has that. He makes everybody's job on the campaign really easy. So, that's part of this.
There were some articles today, and everyone's going crazy in the media. Everyone's like, I heard from these sources, but there was one on fundraising, and that some Democratic fundraisers were expressing concern. Is that a typical thing? The people who raise the money.
Let me say this, Dean. I've been talking to Democratic fundraisers and Democratic donors, including people who donate to both Biden and to the Lincoln Project. And I've got to say, I've heard more people fired up to go after Trump than I have heard people. I mean, look, they all have. There's some nervousness, but they all are like, how do we get Trump? How do we go after Trump? That's what they're getting. That's what they're understanding. And that's what we're telling people. It's like, I don't care at all whether Joe Biden has a bad night. We've got to go after Donald Trump to make sure he has a bad November.
And I'm chatting with our friend Rick Wilson, co-founder of the Lincoln Project. So, Rick, I mean, you just touched on it there a little bit. What do we say to fellow Democrats who, it's not like, they like Biden, but they're deeply concerned. Like, they're like, oh my God, we've never seen this. Well, the sky's falling. It's panic time. What would you tell them based on your experience working on various campaigns?
I'd tell them, as a Republican, think like a Republican. Think like a Republican. What does a Republican do when their candidate's down? They fight. They go crazy. They go hard. They get up every day and they work twice as hard. You know what? People may hate Lee Atwater, but the work ethic of a guy like Lee Atwater infected a whole generation of guys like me who are now, we were in our early 20s, then we're in our 60s now. But it was like, if you're behind, you're up at dawn. If you're behind, you're pressing harder. If you're behind, you're getting your candidate to make more phone calls, raise more money, do more events. If you're behind, if you feel like you had a bad day, do something to change it. Take agency. This is not a ride at Disney World where you hop on and you drive around. This is a campaign where we have to fight until the last dog dies on election night this November.
And that's a great pep talk for people. You got to keep working. You got to press even harder now. A couple last things here. What about, I just had a member of Congress I spoke to, and recently I've been speaking to more Democratic members of Congress who have invoked Project 2025. And I've heard that more and more. Do you get a sense, is this part of the it's fine. We talk about it on my show too, but I was wondering if you heard or have any sense that this is now part of the Democratic playbook to talk about that and say, look what Trump, it's all in writing. It's 900 pages. Hear what they're going to do on issue after issue after issue.
Look, they got to get out of the issue ditch. First off, I think the Democrats could win 40 or 50 House seats this year. I'll tell you how.
Really?
Stop talking about any issue except the cluster of Donald Trump, Mike Johnson, Project 2025, and abortion. Because all those things make even soft Republican voters nervous. I think that if there's a sense in the world that Donald Trump could win this, that the argument that you need a powerful Democratic firewall in the House of Representatives is a extraordinarily powerful argument. And believe me, if I think there's any chance that Donald Trump is going to win this election, and I'm a Democratic activist, and I think it's a lost cause of Joe Biden or whatever. I don't think that. But if I thought that, I would be pushing every bit of my time, resources, money, and effort into rolling up the number in the House so that Speaker Hakeem Jeffries stands toe-to-toe with Donald frickin' Trump in January of 2025 and punches him in the nose every goddamn day. That's what I'd be doing. That is an insurance policy. I think the Democrats are going to win 20 plus seats. I think the number could go crazy if they reframe this race, get out of the ditch about prescription drug costs and climate change and even guns. Make it about Trump, abortion, Project 2025, which has a whole bunch of poison built into it, and guys like Mike Johnson, because those things will fire up the Democratic base like nothing else will. And everybody's got their parochial issue that they love. My parochial issue is winning. So that's my suggestion on how to manage that, and how to win in that.
Rick Wilson's parochial issue is winning. It's funny. I saw a newsletter today from Jim Cramer from CNBC. He goes, "I'm not pro-Trump. I'm not pro-Biden. I'm pro-making money." I'm like, well, that's kind of, you got to like the honesty of that kind of thing. So just the Project 2025, you're saying it is a good thing. Democrats are beginning to lean. I'm just saying
they should be leaning. They should be leaning
Democrats
harder, and they should be leaning harder into 2025. They should be leaning harder into it. It is full of so much poison, and I can tell you, and I'll say more about this as we go forward. In another interview,
sure,
we are seeing in research that once people know about Project 2025, once they understand what it is, it gets ugly, and it gets ugly fast. This is not a winning topic for Republicans.
That's very interesting. And maybe that's why Democrats are talking about it. The last couple of things, I'm chatting again with Rick Wilson. Rick, what do you make sense of Democrat candidates in battleground states running for the Senate? Some incumbents, some challengers, like in Arizona, Pennsylvania, Nevada, running ahead of Biden. Like, what is it?
That's okay with me. That's okay.
Right, I know, but what's the lesson? Is there something we could take from that in the bigger picture here?
Look, the election is stratified at the presidential level by a media climate that feeds Republican voters a narrative that this entire thing is a single apocalyptic battle between Donald Trump and Satan. They don't get the same flow of garbage at the same intensity level at the down ballot races, and so Democrats are outperforming Joe Biden in the states. That's what causes that, and that's what gives a sort of sense of dismay sometimes to the Democrats at the presidential level. But look, I think that those people doing well helps Joe Biden, and Joe Biden doing well in some places helps them. Now, I will say this, weirdly, it's decoupled for the Republicans. Even in places Trump is doing well, his statewide candidates are not. It's because the flow doesn't work both ways. If Trump dropped out of the race tomorrow, the Republicans would get blown out.
Oh,
they would get blown out everywhere. They'd lose the Senate if he dropped out, if Trump died tomorrow. They'd lose the Senate. And that's a good map for Republicans. There's a giant pool of voters inside the MAGA base who are low propensity 1-2 voters, they call them. A five voter votes in every single election, including like the local dog catcher race. A 1 voter occasionally votes in a presidential election, and then general. They've got a lot of 1s and 2s who were only in it for Trump, who are only there because they love Trump. And if that wasn't the factor pushing them, they would be in very deep trouble.
So, and that's a great explanation. I so appreciate you laying that out. Does the VP pick for Trump mean anything to anyone except to him?
No, not at all.
Who do you think it's going to be? Burgum, or you think it's going to be?
You know what? I think he's gonna play, the apprentice game with us until the last second. It is literally the least consequential. Donald Trump's tie color will have more effect on the end of this campaign than his VP.
And when you mentioned, like, I had some people on talking about reverse coattails for Biden. Like,
yep.
Do you think that's true? I wanted to ask you based on your experience. I hear these people say, I'm like, I wonder.
It's rare. It's Trump has given us a reverse coattail effect in the form of Dobbs. Dobbs is the ultimate poison pill for a lot of Republican moderate voters. And when you associate the Republican candidate running with Dobbs, it really puts a hurt on them.
And you see that as the key issue. And last thing, what have you found out? Like last time we chatted, Lincoln Project, you're doing your polling. You can share what you can share, whatever you can't, you can't. But what are you guys working on? And what are you seeing in terms of the work you're doing on the ground?
We are seeing that Donald Trump has a widening gap between a lot of the voters that we target. And the reason that widening gap exists is in two phases. One, the criminality and the felony convictions have hurt him. They can deny it all they want, and the mainstream media can deny it all they want. We are absolutely seeing that is causing him a headwind with the voters we need to persuade in this election. The second thing we're seeing out there is the more Donald Trump talks, the more reservations they have. Trump wins more of them back when they think, okay, he's not doing anything crazy. He's shutting up. He's not being the lunatic, Twitter maniac. He's just being Trump, and I like my tax cuts. But when he's talking all the time, it's real hard for them to preserve that fantasy.
So this debate, does that help Trump, do you think, in terms of the Republicans, the people who watch it? Or
it doesn't matter. No, none of the swing Republicans are none of the swing Republicans are really deeply affected by this debate. He didn't win a lot of people back with it, because when you think about the messaging last night from Trump, pull Biden out of it, Trump's message was incredibly negative. It was incredibly down, like, oh, America's a cesspool and a toilet. It's the worst country ever. We're filthy and deadly. And all the anti-immigrant stuff and all the Trump ranting, because he just got ranty toward the end. So, it didn't move the numbers. And there's some survey work out today, not ours, among independent voters, that they found Biden more persuasive, even though they rated his performance badly. They didn't want Trump to continue with the whoop, whoop. So
very interesting. Well, Rick, my friend, thank you. Thanks for making some time between a crazy day.
Great to be with you as always.
With you in the future, brother. Have a great day.
Absolutely. See you soon. Bye-bye.